Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. My name is Ricardo and in this tutorial I will show you how to configure the integration between SAP Fieldglass and DocuSign. We will go through the entire process step by step from setting up the DocuSign account, creating the endpoint, configuring the activity items, creating the templates, and finally testing the integration to see everything working together. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more SAP Fieldglass tutorials. So let's get started. So the first step to start the testing, the configuration and everything, you need to access this website, the developers.docusign.com. And if you don't have, you need to create developer account. Accessing here, you need to fill all the necessary information and then follow the process to define your username and password. Once you do it, you are going to have access to the DocuSign test environment. Okay. Here in your homepage, you need to access the admin setup. In the left side bar, you can scroll down until finding the apps and keys, right? Automatically, your user are going to have a user ID, an application ID account, and account-based URL, okay? We're going to need all of this information to create our endpoint on Fieldglass. I'm going to access Fieldglass, right? I'm here as configuration manager. So to deploy this integration, you need to have access to an admin account on Fieldglass and also configuration manager user role. Accessing here, you need to find the DocuSign endpoints. It probably will be here, somewhere here. So you need to find this and access this tile. Here, just click on New. ID, it's the name of your endpoint. So DocuSign endpoint, you can define the name you want. So we need the endpoint. The endpoint will be this account, right? Just click on copy and paste and add slash REST API. Okay, this information you can find in the DocuSign documentation. Then we need the integrator key. To have the integrator key, you need to click on Add App and Integration Key. Define a name for this key. Demo key. Create app. Then on this screen, we're going to get the integrator key and add here. We need to get from the other screen. Okay. Then private key. We need to generate this private key. Okay. We need to generate RSA. And we need to copy the private key. This action will show us this information only once. After closing this pop-up, I will never have access to this information again. So copy both keys and store in a safe place. Okay, I'm going to add the private key here. And now I'm going to close this. We need to add one redirect to URL. And here we're going to add our URL here and then save. Okay, then I need to get the user ID as a final information and add here. So this is what's necessary to configure the application key. Username, password, and API account not necessary as we are defined to access this as application key and not using username and password. After clicking on submit, we finished the first step. So our DocuSign endpoint is done. Before moving on into SAP Fieldglass configuration, there is one important step that we need to follow. Otherwise, the integration will fail. Basically, we need to follow some steps to grant access to our user, on our DocuSign user, to be accessed via application key, right? So basically, we need to follow this OAuth JSON web token and grant access to our user. I'm going to share with you in the description of this video the URL where you can find more information. If you scroll down, the important section to us is this one, granting consent individually. So here, basically, we need to do one small thing. We need to call this URL. I'm going to copy and paste in a new tab, right? So basically, server server needs to be your DocuSign environment. So if you're in production, you need to copy and paste production URL. If you are in developer, as I am, you need to copy and paste this URL and include here, right? Then we have the client ID. The client ID, it's our integration key. In our DocuSign account, we're going to go back to the admin tab, scroll down, and find the apps and keys options. Click on actions, edit, and copy our integration key. Then come back and paste here in our client ID. Then we have our redirect to URL. Then it's finished. I just need to click on enter and we should receive a message from DocuSign. So this key is requesting access. This application will be permitted to request access to your account without your being present. Create and send envelopes. Obtain links for starting signing sessions. So it's essential because we are going to send envelopes from Fieldglass, right? Then you just need to allow access and we're going to be redirected to our Fieldglass login page. And that's it. This step is done. Now your DocuSign user is ready to be called by Fieldglass and to receive all the information and do the signature process as expected. Now, the last step to finish the DocuSign configuration is to finally build the template. If your first template, you're going to see a button here to create a new one. If you already have one, you can use or click here and copy. The creation page, you are going to define the template name, upload the contract here in PDF or Word. This document is not really relevant as it will be used only in the next step to properly include the right fields in the template, avoiding later to have some field hiding any important information in the document. Then we have the recipient. Here we need to define who will sign this document. We can have one or multiple recipients, and we need to define the roles. Here in this field, you can define the name you want. It's not really relevant. It just needs to be aligned with Fieldglass. The options here, you just need to keep the needs to signing. That will be the relevant one. You have a bunch of others, but I'm not going to go deeper in DocuSign possibilities. In the messaging, you can customize all the information the signees will receive via email. So you can customize the subject of the email and also include a standard message here. The category just selects the one you think best match the document we are going to send for signature. So it's not indeed really relevant to Fieldglass integration. When finishing this, just click here on Add Fields. The document loaded in the previous step will serve as a guidance to us, providing the layout to allow us to include the fields we want to have in this document. So here I included the date signed and the signature. You can select the ones you wish and just drag and drop in the document. But this document loaded here will not be used to anything because it will be Fieldglass that will generate the PDF document and send to DocuSign to be used as the final document to be sent to the signees. For instance, in this document, I have worker/supplier name and signature. Okay, but from Fieldglass, this information will be filled dynamically, having the first name and last name of the worker. That's why I'm explaining the document you are uploading here will serve only for this step. When finishing this, you can just click on Save and Close. Then you will see the document you just created, and now we need to get the template ID. So clicking on this document, we're going to see the details page, and in the details page, we need to get this template ID that will be relevant later when configuring Fieldglass. Before moving into the Fieldglass part, I would like to talk about XSL templates. because we need to build one to allow Fieldglass to create this contract to us. So moving to Visual Studio Code, I have here the XSL template that will be rendered by Fieldglass and will generate the document you just saw and that was uploaded in DocuSign. Uh, Basically, think on XSL templates like a cookie cutter for documents. You can design the shape once and define where the logo goes, where the headings, if it's bold or not, what's the bullet list. It, it's the same, basically the same what you do in the Word document, right? You create a document, you type whenever you want, you change the format, and then you have some setups in the background. So an XSL template allows us to define this, and then every time you feed it with different data, a new person's name, date, or details, it stamps out a fresh document with that exact same shape, not being necessary to add to or do anything. So it allows us to create dynamically contracts, documents, terms of agreements for different workers. But to have this kind of flexibility, we need to turn that PDF file on this XSL template. And here we have all the definitions, the page width, height, margins. Uh, we have the logo. We have all the let's say hard-coded wordings and paragraphs. And if I scroll down here, let me find it. Here, instead of having hard-coded the worker name, we can use two variables, first name and last name, that will get this information from Fieldglass and populate here every time. And to define these variables, we can define this in the field. In the document, standard fields, you just type the name of the field without any space. For custom fields, we need to have a different way of calling, and we need to use internal reference. The internal reference are defined on Fieldglass via Configuration Manager. So moving to the system as Configuration Manager, you need to find an option that's called internal reference. And here we can find all the system custom fields and we can define internal reference. If you click here, you can define an internal reference for each custom field, and then later it can be called by our template that will read this information for every worker in this case, and populate automatically the PDF created with the information. To create XSL files, there's different ways, right? You can use any AI, ChatGPT, Claude, or if you have the knowledge, you can build it from scratch. It's not a competence that usually SAP Fieldglass consultants should have, but if you know how to do it, it will save you a lot of time. We need to configure the next step within Fieldglass. For that, access the admin configuration, find the configuration tile, and look for DocuSign signature template. For that, you just need to click the list of all templates you may, all providers you may have will be shown. Then click on New button, the template ID. Did you remember on DocuSign when you came here in the templates? After creating our template, we had to access the details page. And within the details page, we have the template ID. So we just need to copy and paste here to tell the system which template it's necessary to call. Then you can give a name. It will be the unique ID, let's say. Okay, APA account. So just select the one we just created. Then here, the recipient information, we need to match the template configuration. For that, return to the DocuSign, click on three dots, click on Edit, and here scroll down and match the recipients. So we created just one, that's our signee. If you need to add more recipients, just click on Add, include the signing order. We just have one, and include here the same role name defined in the DocuSign, and just add it, and this step is done. Then we need to Go back to the admin configuration. Still under the configuration, we need to came here and find the XSL template. Okay. In the XSL template, we have a few dummy templates. In this section, you can find the baseline template. So these are sample templates provided by SAP. For instance, if you need to create a template for work order, you can just download this one, and this template will provide you a base on how to configure, how to call the fields from Fieldglass and everything. So it's a good starting point if you don't have enough experience when creating these templates. In our case, I'm going to click on New. Here we need to define first the type that in our case will be the activity item. So when creating a work order, approving this, our scenario will be one activity item will be triggered, and then the actor needs to start the signature process. Okay. A name will be the code of conduct, the work order, the XSL template. We need to open and find our code of conduct. Language. Let's select English United States, our time zone, okay, date format, your time format, and number format. So if you send any variable in the date in a date format or time or number from Fieldglass, the integration will follow. The system will send information following this format here to build the PDF. Then just click on Add. Then let's go back to the admin configuration. Scroll down to the workflow tile and find the activity item option. Accessing the list, just click on New option. Here, in the type, we need to select Manage Contract Signature. And as subtype, we want to have this Add attachment to contingent work order. But be careful because we have two options. We also have Attach contingent worker contract. But this subtype requires manual action. Then we need to select this one. Here, I'm going to define the code and action as the same as we have for completion type. Scrolling down, the actor. Let's have the work order owner doing the action. Then this document should be automatically updated by the system. And in this case, we need to select our XSL template. Usage optional. Let's keep this way. Evaluate prerequisite as no. Then this will be done at the work order creation, escalating 1 day, and that's it. The first activity item is already created. Then I'm going to create a second activity item for the same type, okay? But in this case, will be initiate the signature process. For this item, I'm going to use this as code and action. Then the actor will be the owner. The usage will be also optional, but here is the difference. Evaluate prerequisite section will be yes, and the prerequisite will be the one we just created. Oh, escalate will be the same. Then in the last section, we're going to add the template we just created. With the signee as recipient role, we just have one option. And then the system role will be the worker signing, okay? Then we just need to add. Now the configuration is finished. And I'm going to show you how it will work in the system. To demonstrate the integration working, I just hired this contingent worker. Then on activity items, you can find both activities. The behavior here will be the first activity where we define it to be done by the system will be always loaded as completed already, because this, if you click here, you can see that it was performed by Fieldglass agent. Basically, this activity item will be the one that will monitor the integration. And once it's finished, we will attach the document in the work order. And here, if you click on the e-signature process, as we are the manager, right, the work order owner defined to act on this, we can initiate the signature process. All the worker information will be loaded here. For demonstration, I'm going to include a different email, and then we can manually initiate the process. But bear in mind, you want to configure this to initiate automatically if you want. Okay, after initiated the process, you can see that the envelope ID sent to DocuSign was populated here, and you can follow the signature status. You can see that it's pending and also the PDF generated. One thing I want to show you is that the variables, including the first and last name, we defined in the XSL template, are reading the first and last name and populating here. So for every new worker, their names will be there, not being necessary to manually do anything. So here we can follow the process. And now I'm going to show you the email received and how to proceed in DocuSign. Here we have the email received by the worker requesting to sign the document. In the body text, you can find the message defined in the DocuSign to be sent here. Then the worker can click on Review Document. They will be asked to log in on their DocuSign account. If they don't have one, they need to create a DocuSign account. Again, that message will be shown to the worker. They can click on Continue, and the signature will be captured here, right? After finishing, then back to Fieldglass, you can see that both activity items are now completed. And then if you click on details and scroll down to the end of the page, you can see that the document signed is already attached here. With this, we finish our video. Sorry if it. With this, we finish our demonstration. I hope this video helps you to define your integration, to set up everything, and to understand how it works on Fieldglass and DocuSign.